Okay, so as far as the baby of the century issue of like 1964 is reflecting some issues with the Oracle Corporation, or what 64 means, uh, involving Oracle, or the alphanumerics of an American, or like 1964 and like a winner, or but like, hey, are those hors d'oeuvres? I mean, is that caviar? With the Prince of Wales, and like, really, does the map come with a menu? Kind of like, beyond the front lines of the beachfront. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like that hors d'oeuvres issue is kind of like, hey. So is that like an introductory, like there's some projected estimate option in the future, exceeding above sea level issue? I mean, like, is the accusation of hors d'oeuvres is like, is that like the projected estimate and option in future of like whether hors d'oeuvres is like suggesting that the caviar is beyond like primate spawning? I mean, really, is that like what like the black dot on the map means to like whether or not if a family law is actually accused of like evolving and beyond the Prince of Wales? I don't know if that would be guardianship or like uh, management at in some boundaries of like intense liquidable equity, or overcoming the elements in the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Oh my God! I mean, is there like an embryo involved for real? Right? Okay. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, so yeah. So back to the map and the issue of like being map being 30, Bible, and baby and all that good stuff. And automatically, when I think of like some of the issues that I've mentioned a little bit earlier, through like a lot of years, many years, and really actually gaining and actually finding what seems to be like very pertinent information, such as like the secrets of the temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, which in my mind seriously automatically equates to like a Moses issue, and like whether or not that Moses or like if you see a mountain climate issue, or you know. The issue of like the Moses thing, and equating to like 71 in Pearland, or not Pearland, Texas, truthfully, um, or what Harris County, or Houston area, Houston, Texas area, equating to like Harris being 73 in Egypt, and the thing about the Ten Commandments. And anyway, beyond the Ten Commandments, all the way to like the De Beers issues, like there's some like real, dimensionally clause integration and like access easements of like, if you want to call it the Washington D.C. dimensionally clause, or direct circuitry, or the information provided to what wealth means in a heavenly sense of like Christian basic principles, through the baptism becoming Christ-like, even the resurrection, life after death, and all that stuff about becoming Christ-like, through the baptism, truthfully, even the book cover, truthfully, I mean, if anyone like really gets into like the information involving like this, the psychic warrior issue, and America's foremost psychic spy, and how the cover up the top secret Stargate program and all that. Well, the book cover is like I mean, if you look at it, I mean, really, it's kind of like really. I mean, if it's only like suggesting that the baptism is like an international baptism. I mean, really. I mean, truthfully, I mean, I've looked at a lot of stuff with Oracle Corporation as far as like a database administration, firmware, middleware, enterprise management, as compared to like uh, yeah. There's other issues involving like Cybele, or what Cybele. When I was on it, like I say, there had been several times like when I was on Westlaw, I had immediately noticed a distinguishable difference between during the time when I was actually like studying to be a paralegal. Although I did complete 9 classes and 9 courses, not necessarily 9 classes, but truthfully, I mean, it was a very short amount of time. But I mean, I put like many hours beyond the classroom while I was attending, and like years after. I mean, really studying law, far beyond truthfully what I had anticipated. But anyway, I was like really realizing something about the Westlaw issue as compared to like what international law truthfully is, as compared to what you see in like a law library. I mean, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. I mean, it's ridiculous. So not funny about the color codes of what the law library means at truthfully every level. Even a color code like the United States Codes Annotation, or what the federal law means to the New Testament as far as color code, and the Ten Commandments, and the Pharaoh issue, like when the water turned red and blood and all that good stuff about the thing, and the color code, or even that game, the pagan idolatry issue of like the Ten Commandments, reflected almost like the blackbird issue, and how true it is. I'm just truthfully going by my memory, and with the blackbird, to what was given as a pagan idolatry. Although something about the holy seagull and the color code of like a seagull being predominantly white and black, like the NASA and a space shuttle. The series of like I don't remember exactly how many space shuttles with NASA. Maybe something like comparable to like the Statue of Liberty or even the layers of the atmosphere. I think there might have been 7. I'm gonna have to actually look at that and actually think about it really. Although comparable reference to like the telepathic TP issue and like the crown with the 7. I don't like calling them spikes. I like calling it like a pylon. What would be normally identified normally with certain aspects in geometry as well as even trigonometry, as far as like pylons or like cones. Or even really, truthfully, a Native American Indian that's like, like, hey man, it's like, is it good? Is it still good, bad? I don't mean to sound like a deferred idiot, right? Anyway, yeah, for real, okay? So really, truthfully, and if that's all about, an issue what like a reservation means to like a monetary, domestic, and like gross national products as aggregates, or like a reservation or preservation, or what that means as a byproduct as compared to like the national gross product, as well as what all that means to truthfully maybe what has been manufactured, predominantly anticipating someone or like having a right to assemble that is accused of like having a placement issue, and if there's any issues of like involving a test of like what it means to be there when that being there only looks like maybe an accusation that truthfully doesn't even have to be. Many people might not see anything more than what that means with having the right to assemble at a degree level by far, or what management means to other people that might suggest what economics means to a plain horizon, or what a country dictates a natural source. The word normally, I don't want to call it a mentally closed idiot's fee of like calling it income, or what consensual, reputable standards of consensual participation, or what that means, and in the sense of the Ten Commandments, or like a pagan idolatry. Truthfully, I studied bibliography, far beyond. My mother was so into it. How could I not know? She really knew it when she was alive, really, than many pastors, preachers, motivational speakers on a topic. Christian Science is a little bit more in depth, but as far as her, she knew it better. Christianity and bibliography, in the sense of the text itself of Christianity, that it's not limited to what view I look at it in a whole different perspective as compared. But compared to what I've heard on television and other preachers at other churches, she really knew it. Cited, quoted, lawyers and attorneys do, like laws and what is involved with like citing case precedents, as a matter of fact, in that sense and manner, as presence being like not in need of overruling. And if the word is only opinionated, based upon like whether that is really going to be like a first time issue, and no other case precedent supporting in the fact of it not being opinionated, or what factors are involved with what opinionated is, whether that is only the issue of like a degree explanation based upon like the experience and the demanded standard, or total release of obligation, in the sense of whether citing, quoting, annotation in reference to like supporting case precedents, or whether a new case is the first time issue. And I find that almost hard to believe. But truthfully, like, I'm looking at my birth year, like 1964, in a whole different way. And what that means to a lot of things, it's amazing that really, like, I live in Pearland, and I was kind of like brought up and taught and raised to like, to say like, when anything is beyond like 1,000, like 1,100, say like 1,100 instead of like 1,100, it's like automatically I'm realizing something about, if that's really an issue of like paramount, and what a mountain means to, if you want to call it, whether if a pyramid will reflect maybe a degreed angle, like anywhere between like close to 90 degrees, I don't see that really with a pyramid. And if there's like an issue between like 45 degrees as compared to like what 90 degrees is, or like with I-10, like needing like another factor creating two sets of like binary numbers, with only possible binary numbers like normally uh, being 1 and 0, or like that fact applied from like a pyramid to a mountain issue, or like for purple mountains majesty above the fruited plains. I mean, really, I mean, I've studied bibliography, and something about ye shall know them by their fruits issue. And all that. Really, I've looked at everything, and I'm not disregarding anything as insignificant at this point, based upon a lot of issues that really have been, truthfully, in my mind, whether their significance is only like, the accusation of like, just like anyone think it is like valuable information, specifically in this area. But anyway, back to the issue with like I-10, or taxation code 10, equating to like 141, or the itemization issue. And what itemization really is, and if that's only an issue of like itemization, distinguishable if whether a national anthem is only using a third party, or if that would include maybe like what real estate escrow means, or something like retroactive participation, in a sense of proper English grammatical composition, and what the national anthem means to degreed and non-degreed issues, or non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization in real estate, or what HUD and FHA mean in the sense of banking, whether if FHA and HUD, if you want to call it a loan, or if there's distinguishable difference of it like not being a deduction and actually a credit, compared the two between FHA and like the homeowners association, really dictating if having the right to assemble is earn the credentials of that mere sake, and not at random, like insignificant choice based upon an economic alternative as what's available, not necessarily the gain acquired, choosing what would be not necessarily considered an economic factor, if you want to call it an earned right, privilege, or whatever the case may be, or many factors involving, so many things. It's ridiculously not funny or humorous to me, but truthfully, I've studied everything I could possibly about the Houston, Texas area, and certain factors with alphanumerics and issues that seem to be like something on my mind. So anyway, the thing about the issues and involving like real estate and what expenditures mean, if that goes to the point of if expenditures is only an issue of like degreed or non-degreed issues based upon the experience of whether the circuit has actually identified a national anthem representative of the circuit, and the direction in what the circuit is meant, going like through an entire circuit, representing far beyond, truthfully in my mind, what normal people might disregard as what an international monetary fund means. If monetary only suggests whether or not if a reserve is active or inactive, or dormant per se, if purgatory is the word in religion, ultimately, the US dollar reflects, not necessarily the word, I say reflect quite a bit, and I don't want that to mean a disregard as some imagination of imagery that it would only suggest maybe an imagination that is not necessarily the actual participation. That's not really what I'm trying to suggest when I say the word reflect. Maybe, if the information is gained and like used as a standard for like, someone else, it might suggest maybe the point of origin would only be that fact of where it came from, and some other use from somewhere else, giving an impression. But anyway, yeah. In a way that really I look at like bibliography and involving like you shall know them by their fruits. Apparently, obviously a pair is, so like my birth year is like a 19 and 64, like 83, like a winter issue. And when I was reading that in the Secrets of the Temple, how the Federal Reserve, Secrets of the Temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country. There's the chapter of like winners and losers kind of like thing, and really, there was like really an experience that I had. It seemed to be like not at the time. I knew it was Flag Day and I knew it was a Saturday, but I didn't even consider it as a VSAT issue. Truthfully, and there's not a doubt in my mind now that truthfully so, or like an SAT test, or what military time means to a baptism. Really, seriously so. And that book cover on the psychic warrior, and truthfully, all the information about a spiritual experience that would like suggest, not the subliminal message, minus God or lie, or the mental telepathy, and if there's the issue of whether if the Holy Spirit is like not the Holy Ghost, or citing a biblical terminology I mean, at this point, I mean, is that all the psychic warrior, America's foremost psychic spy, and to cover up the top secret CIA's Stargate program? I mean, if that's really the only issue about a spiritual miracle or a hot god or the heartbeat of America issue, reflecting some issue like the FBI miracle or escrow or heart god or the Robert issue, or not necessarily, I mean, Robert Half might suggest something that might simulate or suggest maybe both sides of the U.S. $1 bill, or maybe or above and below like I-10, or what the equator means by retroactive. If I don't know if I would call it isometrics. I mean, but somewhere between the equator and like I-10. If that's the only factor of like one person, or what it means below as compared to above I-10. I'm not real sure about that, but I mean, there seems to be like some really serious like color codes, not limited to electronic analytical color codes of international standards. So likewise, while I'm thinking about it, I was thinking about the geographic informations in the province of like color codes of pastels. As a matter of fact, that was like a real big deal in my earlier years of world history, as a matter of fact. And really the architecture in the earlier years, like in the kind of like early mid to the mid to, like the 1960s, the color code of like pastels was seriously a big deal. Even more so in my mind, based upon my experience of like the Houston area, like even more so like of hospitals, not limited to, but the pastel was like a really big deal in that way back then. Even plaid, used a lot of pastel colors, and normally that would suggest in a lot of artist perspective involving like certain grades of like a chalk type of a more flat than a glossy or luminate, kind of like a flat, not really saturated or glowing, a pastel, yeah. So I mean that was like a color like even identified with like province, but through all my years of thinking about GPS and global positioning systems, beyond a toy. I mean, so for real, yeah, and geographic information systems. International financial management of like globalization and domicile issues. I mean, really, some halo, amphibious stuff. I mean, really, I mean, it's ultimately getting to like whether Rangers, in the Marine Corps, not necessarily limited to beyond the importing and exporting, or what Rangers means to Texas or home on the range or wherever that may be. Truthfully, I mean, the word amphibious is a Marine thing, and I've seen it predominantly more with like a Rangers of the Marines, as compared to like the Marines itself, or not necessarily even the merchant Marines, but or what that might suggest to like a subconsciousness minus chase equals 181 in Houston, Texas. I mean, seriously, I mean, if that's comparable to like what is led to believe as not a seance or whatever the case may be, I'm not really truthfully into that. But the thing with this is the psychology involved with something about it. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to get on beyond that. Okay. Anyway, so the terminology that truthfully that I've seen that normally would involve like Rangers that are like thoroughly separate from merchant Marines and distinctly not necessarily. I don't know if they even consider themselves a division of categorization, or thoroughly segregated as not even involved with each other. Truthfully, I'm not worried about it. Truthfully, I would perceive that would almost be truthfully the issue of what, in my mind, of amphibious would be like automatically, based upon the information like I've had my entire life, a J. Edgar Hoover issue. Or, truthfully, seriously, I mean, all joking or funny, not necessarily joking, truthfully, if, the humor, whatever, about the Long John Silver issue, or something like, not the long neck bottle. Oh God, not the long neck bottle. Okay, but seriously, like a Long John Silver issue and what that means in liquidable equity of importing and exporting. Truthfully, or seriously, or some pagan idolatry issue. Seriously, I mean, truthfully. So, I mean, if there's like an issue of like pagan idolatry means, or some humor about J. Edgar Hoover or amphibious, what that means. Beyond the Ten Commandments, yeah, the Egypt and in my mind it was like the blackbird. I hadn't even watched it, but it was just something on my mind about a black color code of what the bird, and even more specifically involving NASA and the spaceship shuttle, Columbia Endeavor, Challenger, Discovery. I think there's more, but anyway. So I mean, it's like predominantly like the color code of like a holy seagull, equating to like Clear Lake, Texas, which NASA always, identified itself in the Clear Lake, Texas area as Houston, before even Houston was even really annexed. I mean, Clear Lake, Texas was even annexed as Houston. So, I mean, anyone who's lived here before actually Houston annexed, and if that's really the issue of like the spirit of adoption, or just like knowing, because I mean, you've heard, I'll say it again, you've probably heard it all the way through the first 12 public degrees. Guess you had to be there kind of thing, or even maybe even freshman, sophomore. I mean, if it need to be beyond like the freshman or sophomore year, whether the associate's degree is on its way, to the bachelor's, maybe exceed beyond the accusation of academics and get into the word curriculum and really what the word curriculum is as compared to academics. And if there's like really the issue of what that really means is comparable as what curriculum is to academics. And truthfully, what that means, truthfully, I mean, if it gets beyond to the whether the issue is like a proper English grammatical composition or a third party or intellectual or the consumer electronic issue of what curriculum is as compared to academics, or proper English citing what third person means in proper English grammatical composition, or I've mentioned it before. Really, I mean, an objective. Wait a minute. Are you sure? Are you sure you're in the right class, man? You sure you're in the right place, the right university? The issue between a topic and a subject. I mean, it's like really, it gets really ridiculously so not funny. I mean, it's unreal, so not funny. Okay, but you're like, hey man, is it good, man? I mean, it's still all brains. I mean, it's still like a lot of brains, right? It's still good, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, right. Anyway, yeah, so like, that's really like not funny. Anyway, yeah, so like back to the like topic, okay, whether, being on par or above or below or on par, on or above or below sea level, or, I don't know if somewhere between would be some religious accusation of like a, some, national anthem issue or, dictating what that means, and dimensionally clause or integration or like access to easements, or Washington D.C. being like electronic God and direct circuitry. A dimensional clause is the acronym or abbreviation of Washington D.C. or the total of 137 equated to like Clear Lake, Texas, okay, or the Holy Seagull like in the Houston, Texas area. And truthfully, I mean, not every seagull has like a little orange like stripe on its beak. Not all the time. Sometimes, not all the time, but truthfully so. I mean, it's predominantly, black and white is it. It seems to me like the Holy Seagull, most definitely, the somewhere in my mind, not necessarily the gastroenterology issue, although like at Astroworld, I'm not comparing Astroworld to like gastroenterology. Truthfully not, but there, at Astroworld there used to be like a barrel of fun. And it was like a big round cylindrical type of deal, and it would spin with centrifugal force. And then everyone that was in it would like be up against the wall. Then the floor would drop, okay, and then the centrifugal force would, direct the weight and the force to keep the actual position from like ascending or descending. It would be like not comparable to levitation, but kind of like a principle of what centrifugal force means in a horizontally cylindrical. Centrifugal force issue, like the barrel of fun, like an asteroid used to be before, that was a different issue. Anyway, yeah, so, I mean, somewhere in my mind, somewhere about a 55-gallon drum barrel. And that fact about Astroworld, and what centrifugal force is, or, even the pagan idolatry issue of what, like, the Hoover, nobody does it like you thing, or, this, the, I mean, it's so... whatever. But really, I think about the J. Edgar Hoover and the vacuum cleaner kind of like issue with what, truthfully, I mean, even cosmetic surgery suggests liposuction. But anyway, yeah, really. Okay, anyway, seriously. But if the pagan idolatry issue of like Long John Silver or international floating accounts of interest-bearing accountability, in essence, a matter of what ergonomic human compatibility means in municipal annuities as a fixture in real estate is really what I'm getting at, even more so to the sense of what human capital means at that point. Um, Likewise, if the pagan idolatry linked with the Ten Commandments in the movie The Ten Commandments, and the isometric issue, the 10 units of measurement, like in the metric system of like Europe, all the way to the I-10 issue of like North America and like the United States of America, and the 10, all 10 equating to 30, a map, a baby, and the Bible, and I can go on and on about the 30, and at least one of the 10-point issues of the triangle that seems to be seriously something not limited to the secrets of the temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, and the Ten Commandments and issues involving what the metric system means as compared to the American English Standard, in units of measurement. But yeah, anyway, so like, I've looked at all that in that way as far as like the map and even bibliography and the map and geographic information system, even global positioning systems, or even what de facto is in that sense of whether it's annuity or whether, litigation might be comparable reference, whether de facto is even defined as what annuity as compared to what a settlement would be, and what the on behalf issue really suggests. And really I kind of like looked at the issue between like the Roe v. Wade. Okay, my name is Wade, and truthfully, I mean, many things have happened, and truthfully, it's not like really I'm thinking about like an adoption. I mean, excuse me. Normally, based upon the information given on a Roe v. Wade case, was normally about an abortion. Although, truthfully, biblically, I mean, if all that was like, led to be believed, like, hey, you got it all wrong. I mean, is that like supposed to be the accusation, like a defector, or, even like watching television is like the accusation of like, man, what, a national security issue? A threat to national security for like repeating what was being led to believe is information is like accurate information, yet the word abortion thoroughly. I mean, you've heard it like on ships, abort ship, abortion, abort ship. Okay, I mean, if it really gets to like a Star Trek issue, or what free enterprise means. I mean, is the adoption suggested as an annuity, or the abortion as a deduction, and what itemization means as compared to non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization in like real estate, okay? Or what real estate means is domiciled as compared to a head of household, or whether it's like all manufactured to be like, total idiocy for believing anything or information like on K television. Really at this point in my mind, even W television and W radio as well as like K television, K radio, in such a way. I mean, if K radio and K television only suggests whether it's only half of what would suggest is an absolute value of what two Ks would represent, not necessarily the asterisk. I mean, if there's only a division, a separation suggesting, a K retroactive, like symmetrical, asymmetrical issue, and what absolute value means to what tolerance is absolutely no tolerance, it's just the absolute issue of like, I-10 representing, like the binary numbers and sequencing characterizations and like sets of four and the Mount Rushmore forefathers of the nation issue. Or like the D in Washington, D.C., or the FBI minus CIA equating to 4, or the D, okay? Or like, even the D.C. equating to 7, or maybe even, the degree, single processing beyond what shorthand court reporters, of real shorthand court reporters, absolutely dictate and cite and quote. Diction based upon the court proceedings inside the courtroom with a, symbolic waveform. And if that's only the reality of what annotation ultimately results in, of waveform and signal processing beyond calculus, or that word involving, okay, algebra introduces the word algorithm, although the absolute values are used, although the algorithm is only introduced, not a practical application in algebra, although the absolute value, the two vertical bars of absolute value most definitely are used in algebra, although, that is the issue of the algorithm being introduced, not yet in need of the absolute in algebra, because algorithms truthfully are not used in, as far as I know, in algebra. Only the absolute value of the two vertical bars are whenever it's needed, although the algorithm is the word introduced as a word, although not a practical application yet, although the algorithm is most definitely, like when it gets to calculus, using that fact of absolute value using the two vertical bars. So I mean, truthfully, I mean, if that's like involving what staggered means to first, second, and third world issues, or like proper English numerical composition, or first, second, and third person issues, past, present, and future, I mean, seriously. I'm still not laughing, okay? So anyway, so like, you know, there's like many things I'm like looking at as far as like what annuities mean in a sense of whether if the registered charity is like a defector seeking amnesty at the bank, like, you know, every Friday, every payday, you know, whether a direct deposit was only like simulating the impression of whether, you know, defector seeking amnesty had granted, you know, through some accusation of being telepathic and accused of like agreeing to like an endorsement and like really not even knowing what that means, you know, truthfully. And like if that's medieval, not medieval, medieval, you know, I mean, that is the phrase medieval, okay, periodic era, okay. In constitutional law, although there's like the ratification and codification issue, and, you know, it's kind of like, you know, well, you know, hey, you know, well, you know, I mean, you know, is that the accusation of, you know, like, you know, being accused of like being a total, you know, fool for believing and repeating something that was like given as like the absolute standard. And normally, I mean, a lot of people like assume that a lot of things that they see in television involving movies and television series and even like legal terminology and like you know, law, predominantly criminal law, unfortunately, but not limited to. Every now and then you'll get some real corporate and business and and networking, or, you know, some real issues beyond, you know. Are you kidding me? Anyway, yeah, so anyway, so like, I mean, if banking is only the issue of what a president is, and if there's like a national security issue involving whether if the retroactive presidential administration is being accused of being null and void based upon the accusation of like a willingness of endorsing the entire employment history, or if that's like a breach of national security and being accused of being a defector seeking amnesty, and in need of like governmental amnesty, while like sovereign immunity is like deciding whether or not, you know, there needs to be like the consumer report price index involved, right? So anyway, like, yeah, hey, all right. So anyway, yeah. So that's not funny, okay? So anyway, yeah, you know, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna sit here and listen to it, make sure it's all good, and make sure it's all going. I'm gonna take a break. Yeah. Really, I can go on for years. Yeah. Yeah, I can go on for years about this. I mean, is that like really still like now? Oh, anyway, yeah, I'll be back in a minute. Okay.